Formula columns are one of the most useful column types inside the Monday platform. Let's learn how to use them. So here we have a sample projects board where each item represents a different project. For each project, we have the project's information, we have the expected timeline, and the expected income as well as the expected expenses. Let's suppose we want a column that represents the net profit of the project. We can create a formula column. To do that, click on the Add Column button. Select the formula column, then we've added a formula column. So here we're being prompted to set up our formula column. In the upper part, we have the formula input. This is where we actually write the formula that we want to execute to reach to the final cell value. On the left, here we have all of the different values that we can use inside our formula. We have them separated by columns, functions, and constants. Firstly, we have columns, which represents all of the items data. So we can use values inside our items as variables to generate a final value in our formula column. So here we have all of the different columns inside our items. We also have functions that work similarly from Excel or Google Sheets functions. So you have the function name, you have the different arguments separated by comma. I'll show how to use these in a second, but we have all sorts of different functions here that operate on dates, that operate on numbers, that operate on text. So it's up to you to dig into all of the different options that we have here and read into the documentation that we have here. So we have an example, we have a description of what the function does, and this way you can see if that function fits what you need. Lastly, we have constants. These are either true, false, or pi, right? These are values that don't change over time regardless of what happens. And these are useful sometimes, but you'll be using mostly functions and column values. Right, so let's actually start writing some formulas. So in this example here, we have the expected income and we have the expected expenses, and we would like to calculate the net profit. To calculate the net profit for that project, we need to grab this value and subtract this value from it. To do that, let's go to the formula column, click on the functions, and we need to subtract one from the other. We can do that with the minus function. So search here for the minus function. So here we have the minus function, click on it, and here we can see that it created the function and we need to insert the function's arguments. So for the minus function, we can see that this returns the difference between two numbers. Need to insert two values inside the function. The first value will be the expected income of the project, which is a column value. To grab the column value, let's go to the column section and let's grab the expected income column value. Keep in mind that any variables that we have inside our formula will be denominated by this curly braces notation right here. So everything that sits inside the curly braces will be treated as a variable. If we remove the curly braces and simply leave the column title here, it will be treated as text, and that's not what we want. We want it to be treated as a number. So we leave it as that, and let's add the second function value, which will be the expected expenses column value, right? We can find it here, click on it. Now we have the minus function. The first argument is the expected income value, and the second argument is the expected expenses value. And from what we saw from the documentation, what this function does is grab this value and subtract from this value, resulting in the net profit. Click on Set Formula, and this will generate the net profit for that project. If we want formatting on our formula column, we can do that by clicking on the bottom here and selecting $2. This way, we just added formula formatting without actually having to concatenate any text. Now we can rename this column to net profit. And there we go. Now we have a formula column. So this value is being generated from subtracting 45K from 150K. We can also calculate dates using formula columns. So in here we have the project timeline column, right? We have a start date and an end date. Let's suppose we would like to calculate how many work days we have between the start date and an end date for the project. essentially meaning how many days we'll have to work on the project, right? We can do that by adding another formula column. Let's go to the functions, and we have specifically a function that calculates the amount of work days between two dates, and that function is workdays right here. So we can see returns the number of working days between two dates. And how we use the function is the first argument is the to date, so the final date, and the from date, the initial date, is the second argument. So let's add this function right here, and then we'll add the project timeline values. So let's go back to the column values. Here we have the project timeline, and for the timeline we can either use the start date or the end date values. We saw that we need to first grab the end date for the first argument, and then comma, and second argument is the start date. Click on set formula, and now we have the amount of days that will take to complete the project. So this is the amount in days, so working days, and this is amount of working days. We can format this value by going to here and saying days. Then this is correctly formatted, and this represents how many working days we'll have to work on the project.